so much for coming.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone's very, very excited to hear everything you've got to say. So first of all, obviously, how are you?
I am very well, thank you very much. I've never actually been into Peterborough itself before. I've passed on the train, I've passed on the A1, so it's really lovely to come here, and this museum is fabulous, isn't it? Who here has been to the exhibition before? Okay, and who hasn't? That's probably the better question. Well, you've got a treat in store, and I think I want to say thank you to the museum and to Adrian / Tom, Adrian, for organising such an amazing event, because I think really it's great. You'll see as Doctor Who fans, it's been so lovingly done, even from the repainting that door frame to the TARDIS. It's great. So yeah.
It's beautiful in there. Please go in. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for playing such an icon as Ace. I mean, let's face it, incredible. I think no matter how old you are when you first get into classic Who, you can relate to Ace in many ways, especially, you know, I mean, I wasn't a teenager when I watched it, but I still watched it and went, yeah, I feel that. You know, so especially about baseball bat skills, what incredible skills they were. No one wants to mess with Ace, honestly. So before you got the part as Ace, had you seen Doctor Who before?
When I was young, I think everybody did in the 60s and 70s. Everybody who own up now, who is like me, a child of the 60s. Anyone? Oh, few. There's a few of us. So that's what you did. You would watch, of course, because for those younger people who are here, there were 2 terrestrial channels, weren't there? And that was the only thing you could see. It was only on for a certain time of day. No way of seeing it again. No repeats. No videos. They hadn't been invented yet. No, nothing. So for us, it was that real family thing of sitting down on a Saturday. Wasn't it after Basil Brush? And, I think so. Grandstand, was it?
Generation Game.
Generation Game, that's right. Grandstand was earlier in the afternoon, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think. And then Basil Brush, and then Doctor Who would come on. But when I was very little, we didn't. My mum was telling me the other day, we didn't get a telly until my brother was born, so that was 1965. And then I wouldn't have watched it when I was that little, I don't think, because I was a bit of a wuss. And then, what I can remember is being very, very scared of the Cybermen. Indeed, so scared that my mum actually stopped me watching it for a while because I was getting nightmares. And so I kind of missed Patrick Troughton. I know, gasp, intake of breath. So the first one I really remember is John Pertwee. And I remember getting a bit confused about John Pertwee because there was this tall man with white curly hair and sort of well, what can I say about his nose that's polite? Sort of a beaky nose. I mean, even that's not polite. Sorry, John. But and I got confused because the vicar at our local church, where I didn't go that often, but often enough to notice, also was a tall man with white hair and a nose. So I thought, what is Doctor Who doing disguised as a vicar at our church? So, yeah, all very confusing. So, I remember very vaguely the sort of atmosphere of John Pertwee and Katie Manning, watching her as Jo Grant. I felt quite sort of protective of her. I think many people probably did, even though I was a child, weirdly. And then I obviously loved Liz Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. She seemed to have a bit more oomph about her. But then I suppose I would have watched Tom Baker. Then we moved house, and I remember being incredibly excited because Trevor Baxter, is it? He was in the Talons of Wayne Chiang, is it? Trevor Baxter, yeah. He lived in a flat in the next road to us, which backed onto our garden. So I used to kind of see him going around Blackheath and think, he was in Doctor Who. Incredible that he was in Doctor Who. I told him years and years later that I used to stalk him around Blackheath. He didn't seem to be that bothered, but anyway, yeah, so Doctor Who was just a sort of natural part of life growing up, wasn't it? And then I went away to university. I watched a little bit of Peter Davison, but then I missed Colin Baker completely and had no idea it was still going on.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I knew everybody knew Doctor Who.
So how did you feel then when you got the part of Ace?
Well, it was weird. It was like it was a dream. But don't forget that back in 1987, and those of you of a certain age like myself will remember, Doctor Who wasn't cool like it is now. Whoever thought, that Doctor Who was going to be this kind of cool programme that everybody loves? Doctor Who was watched by, slightly odd fans who, this was the general perception, not mine, and I didn't even know it was still on. So it was a weird thing. So when I told my friends I'd got this part in Doctor Who, everybody thought it was terribly funny, but also quite impressive as well that it's such a well-known programme. And the best thing about it was that my grandparents even knew what it was, because other stuff I'd been in, theatre stuff, they couldn't show off to their friends about it. But at least here was something with a name that they could actually show off about.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it was kind of, I was absolutely thrilled, because of course it was at the time this iconic part of British culture, and to go from zero TV experience to suddenly being one of the biggest roles on television for a young woman at the time was, I can't believe it. It was amazing. Oh, in fact, I'll tell you the story of when I actually got the part. Many of you have probably heard this before, but I like telling it, so bad luck. I was in Fiddler on the Roof up in Manchester at the Opera House with Topol, who played Tevye in the film. So he was a complete legend, and my agent had sent me down to London for this audition. They wanted somebody who looked younger than they really were and who could ride a motorbike, and I fitted both of those categories. So down I went, begrudging the train fare because I was on equity minimum, back row of the chorus. First time I met the director, second time I met producer John Nathan Turner for literally about 10 minutes, and thought, well, that was a waste of a train fare. Anyway, 2 weeks later I walk back into the backstage area through the stage door, and there's notes all over the notice board, because again, no mobiles, I didn't even have a phone in the flat that I was staying in, saying, Sophie, ring your agent, ring your agent, ring your agent, Sophie, ring your agent. And it was after the half by then, so I had to go and get ready, and went on stage, did the first number, tradition, all that business, a little dance around. And then I knew I had a long gap before the next scene. So we always used to make our calls in that gap. So I took my stack of 10p coins and went down to the stage door where there was a payphone in a little booth in the corner. Went in, called my agent at home, and she sounded a bit cross, and she said, where have you been? I've been trying to ring you all day. And I said, well, I've just been out and about in Manchester. She said, well, you've got the part, but it's a lot more complicated. I need to call you back. So I put the phone down going, what? what? She called me back and she said, I'm sorry I was cross, but I'm so excited. She said, they want you for 3 episodes, which is what I'd gone up for, of Doctor Who, but they also are asking if you would, if it all works out, would you like to be the new Doctor Who assistant? And I was like, what? And I looked down at my rags that I was dressed in this chorus, you know, living with I was living in a housing association flat in London with friends, and council flat in Hume in Manchester, and suddenly I was being offered this iconic role. So I thought about it for probably half a second, maybe, and said yes. And she said, right, I've got to go. And she put the phone down, and I walked out of the phone box, like in shock, really. And the first person I saw in the queue for the phone box was John Scott Martin, who played inside of Daleks, and he was a Zarbi, and he had done all sorts of extra work on Doctor Who. And we'd been teasing him about it, actually. And I said, he was playing the rabbi in our production. And I looked at him and I said, John, I've got the part. And he reached into his rabbi costume to an inside pocket and pulled out this postcard and handed it to me. And it was a BBC publicity photo with 3 Daleks. And I turned it over, and it said, Dear Sophie, welcome to the family. You will not be exterminated. And I said, well, how did you know? And he said, I just had a feeling about this one. Anyway, next thing was we had to all rush on stage for the gossip scene. And normally the gossip scene is, have you heard? Untitled has a new sewing machine. Anyway, I was still in a daze. We rushed onto the stage, and everyone was going, have you heard, Sophie's got the part in Untitled. She got the part. And Topol came on stage. He was meant to talk to a member of the chorus about the sewing machine. He comes on stage, looks over to the chorus, stops everything, walks over, finds me, throws his arms around me, says, well done, Sophie. Walks back, walks down stage, and carries on with the show. And I thought, what the audience must have been thinking. What's going on? So it was amazing.
That's a really cool way to find out.
Yeah.
But also, how do you process that when you've also got so much to do? Obviously, we're here to talk about Ace and how incredible she was as a character, but as well as that, you've written a book, another book. Would you like to tell us about your new book?
Yes, I have. Well, it was all the idea of fan Sean Levy, who's actually here with his family, all dressed in their Ace jackets, which is wonderful to see. So Sean and I have known each other for a long time. And he just sent me a message one day and said, oh, I've had an idea for your next book. So we had a call, and he said, why don't you do a book which is based on Ace's jacket, because he's a fantastic cosplayer. And he said, cosplayers love the jacket, but they often can't find the badges, the jury's out about which badges you wore when, and how many jackets did you actually have, and da-da-da-da. I had no idea. Anyway, so he said, well, and I said, well, yeah, maybe we could do a pamphlet about it. I thought, this is pretty niche, nobody's going to be interested. And then he said, well, I've written a couple of little stories about Ace's badges, and where little things about how she got them. Maybe you should do that. And I thought, maybe I should ask people from the world of Doctor Who if they would like to write a story or a poem or do a drawing or a cartoon or something about the badges. So then I thought, yeah, but nobody's going to be interested in publishing it. Anyway, I rang up lovely Barnaby Eaton-Jones, who I'd done a lot of audio work with. He's a sort of Renaissance man. He does a bit of everything, but he has a publishing wing as well. And I rang up and I said, got this idea, He jumped on it and he said, this is a brilliant idea. Are you sure you don't want to go to BBC Books with it? Are you sure you don't? Are you sure that? And I thought, well, no, I'd like to give you an opportunity to do this if you think it's going to be a goer. And then I started just bothering people who I knew from the world of Doctor Who. And sure enough, everybody was really keen. And we've ended up, well, then we realised that we had far too much material for just one book. So then Barnaby said, well, let's do 2 books then. And we'll do a book with the stories, an anthology, and then we'll do a book about the cosplay and your memories of that as well. And this had gone from, bear in mind, I thought a little pamphlet to now 2 big books. It's now how many pages? Like 200 and something pages, the first one. And the second one is threatening to be as big as well. And and I managed to persuade all sorts of people, from David Tennant and Frank Skinner and Hugh Bonneville and Jodie Whittaker, Stephen Moffat, to fans who I knew as well. And I thought, let's have a gallery of fans with their jackets and what the jacket means to them. So we've got a sort of a galactic gallery in there, and people have sent in their photographs as well. And then Barnaby said, what are we going to call the 2 different books? And I was sitting around with my husband. We had some friends over. I said, we need 2 names for the Ace jacket. They're both going to be called Ace jacket, but one's about this, one's about that. And my husband brilliantly came up with, what about Ace jacket, the inside story, and Ace jacket, the outside story? So that's what we've done. He said it as a kind of joke, but also it ties in nicely with my original Ace book, which was with Mike Tucker, which is called The Inside Story of the End of an Era. So, very long-winded way of saying, I'm absolutely thrilled with it. I think, Liz, could you hold up a book? We've got, there's the book, and I think that you'll agree. It's amazing. It's beautiful, and we even got Peter Capaldi, he's one of the doctors who I've never met. He's done a lovely cartoon in there, because he's a really lovely artist as well. So yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled with it. Yeah.
Super exciting. I can't wait to read it. So we're going to open up some questions to the floor. If anyone has any questions for Sophie at all? Yeah, go ahead. Go on first.
Hey Sophie, excuse any nervousness. You mentioned just before about how in '87 Doctor Who had a bit of a slump, and then you and Sylvester and all the other people involved, to my mind, probably saw that as you were getting towards the end, certainly the very last series just seemed to be going on and up and up, and almost regenerating, for want of a better phrase, the concept and the programme, and yet it was still brought to an end. So did you feel that was happening, that it was growing and getting better all the time?
Yeah, great question, thank you. Yeah, I think as Sylvester and I were doing it, our kind of confidence grew, because, for those of you at the time, there wasn't that much of a great attitude towards Doctor Who, even from amongst the fans themselves. Well, I'm not saying all the fans. This was a small, vociferous group of fans who made their feelings known, and unfortunately, I think contributed to the demise of the programme. Equally, they contributed to the reboot of the programme, so, no complaints. But when I did Dragonfire and my first story, I think the feeling was very much like it was a kind of, a bit of like an annoying thorn in the BBC's side. And so there were two things about that. One, that Sylvester didn't feel like his Doctor was very liked at the time, because a lot of people were saying, oh, he's just a slapstick comedy actor, you know, he's ruining Doctor Who, da, 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 da. So we always felt like we were fighting against the odds. And then gradually that changed, and mostly in part because of Andrew Cartmel, the script editor, who'd come on board without this big backlog of history. He was young, he's a couple of years older than me. He had grown up in Canada, where Doctor Who wasn't a thing. He'd grown up with this sort of comic book background, and that's what he was bringing in. He brought this element of graphic novel, comic book type thing. Sylvester, meanwhile, was finding his Doctor, and he realised that he wanted to actually be a darker, more mysterious Doctor, and that went along with Andrew's ideas too. And Sylvester's idea was that, oh, hang on a minute, yeah, I'm not going to just rely on those old tropes, I'm going to use that comedy where necessary, but even in his jacket, he wanted a darker jacket for his Doctor, which he got. And then by the time we suddenly realised that, oh, people were coming on board, they were enjoying his Doctor more, and I think with the relationship with Ace, it was that was growing as well. The fandom really bought into that relationship as well. Ace was a realistic character. She had a lot of feistiness about her. She was a rounded character, which I think everybody appreciated. And certainly I did. It was fantastic to be able to play her. So by the third season that we did together, season 26, we felt that we were getting better, and that was certainly the attitude. Well, we were doing very well against Coronation Street, which unfortunately the BBC had sort of pitted us against to try and get rid of. And there were advantages to that too, because Andrew realised that he could maybe get ideas past the BBC, the powers that be, that wouldn't, if they'd been actually paying attention to it, they might not have let a story about fascism and anti-racism and the sort of Margaret Thatcher, shall we say, get through. And he actually said that he's told me recently that the powers that be weren't even watching the TX tapes, which was the stuff that was going to actually go out on air. They were meant to view it. But I think by that time they'd gone, nah, we're not even going to bother with that. Which was great for Andrew, because, aha, what should we do next? And Sylvester was very much of his mind as well. And John Nathan Turner, the producer, was great, because he just wanted to promote the show however it was going to be successful. So by the time we filmed Ghostlight, which was actually the last one that we filmed, although Survival was the last one that was transmitted, we had no idea about any of this. John and Andrew kept it completely away from us, which was absolutely right and proper. So we were just having tremendous fun making a programme that we now really believed in,